My name is Renato Beninatto, and I am your guest host today as we experience Nimdzi Live, where we talk about the latest and greatest in translation, localization, internationalization, any Asian that you want, and all that fun stuff that global companies need to delight their international customers, or at least not to piss them off too much. On this program, we invite guests who like to have fun and and create value to the audience of globalization professionals. If you aren't already subscribed to Nimdzi, now's your chance. If you're watching this and you hit that subscribe or follow button, then you will be the first one to be notified when we have new live streams or when Nimdzi Insights publishes new research. Also, check out our sister programs on Multilingual TV. Interesting that we call it sister programs. I would call it brother programs. But anyway, that's a language thing. So we have Last Week in Localization with Sarah Hickey, TEP in Spanish with Juanma Lopez, High Performance Leaders with Andrew Smart, Open World, and the C-Suite Hot Suite. If any of these programs sound interesting, go on over to Multilingual TV by searching for Multilingual Media on YouTube and subscribe to that channel too, after subscribing to Nimdzi, of course. A little bit about the platform. We're doing this as a live stream via LinkedIn events because all our friends are already on LinkedIn, and it makes it easy to share and invite new people. It also makes it easy for you to show appreciation during the stream in two ways: comments and the reaction buttons. In case the stream gets interrupted, because it happens frequently here on LinkedIn, we're also live streaming on Nimdzi's YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter channels. And the most important guest here today is, of course, you, chat. Make your voices heard, introduce yourself in chat. I can see already a lot of activity happening. And ask questions, and our operator, Tucker Johnson, my business partner, will be controlling and feeding them to us. Done. So, on to today's show. Today,
I hope you get some new subscribers today.
Well, hopefully. And we're going to talk about this. Actually, Lionbridge is offering free subscriptions to Multilingual on their website. If you don't have it yet, there you go. There's the Tucker. Anyway, today I'll be talking to John, CEO of Lionbridge, one of the top companies in the localization industry that is celebrating their 25th anniversary this week. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you, Renato.
So 25 years is a milestone for any company. I remember when Lionbridge appeared on the scene, and it was widely seen as the new kid on the block with all these cool ideas and a different name. And the competition used to refer to Lionbridge as the evil empire, mostly because it was taking all the business away from us, the competitors. Who's the new kid on the block today? Who is the competition for Lionbridge now that you're an old timer?
Well, I don't know about old timer. It's remarkable that we hit our 25th anniversary this week. In reading up on companies and longevity, a couple interesting factoids. So the average S&P 500, Fortune 500 company now has a lifespan of 18 years. So we've surpassed that. 2 out of every 3 new businesses don't last a year and a half. So we've survived some tough odds, like lots of people in the space. It is a fascinating space, as we'll talk about. And there are a host of competitors. I think McKinsey has it at 45,000, and that sounds like a very large number. But there are a lot of small entrepreneurial firms in the space. And it's a range of competitors. And like always, I'm very respectful of the household name competitors we've got. But, what always worries me a little bit more is what I don't know and what I can't see. And we're in a fascinating place right now. We've got traditional services business trying to get to technology-enabled services or tech services businesses. And a lot of the new startups in the space really have a technology angle on language and where they want to go. So I think we're at an inflection point. And as we look to the next 25 years, as I have talked extensively about with our teams this year, the old adage that what got us here today isn't going to get us where we need to be 25 years from now, right? So I think we see the future. I think we see where it is headed. The trick for us is to get there.
Well, you mentioned technology, and you mentioned the challenges that come with it, and not knowing what is happening. But you were one of the pioneers in this AI-enabled services for the language technology.
Yeah.
And yet, a year ago, you divested of that business. You sold a very good sale, and a smart move, by the way. Do you think that this AI in localization has gone to through the hype cycle, and we were at the top of the hype cycle and going now into the trough of disillusionment? Or do you think that there's still room for growth for AI in this space? Why did you get out of it?
Yeah, well, I think it's a tale of two cities, right? So we were really two companies. We had the traditional language business, and then we had our AI business, which I had renamed it. We had a couple of different acronyms internally, what we called it, and then put it together into Lionbridge AI. And Lionbridge AI was in some ways a misnomer, and it was a crowd-based business, and there were some language components to it, but by and large, we delivered a large bespoke group, typically to technology companies, to work on social media platforms and search and ads and maps, and to kind of go down the list of things that our teams worked on from a content and a relevance standpoint for consumers. And so that was a very different business. And when we think about AI in the language business, I think we're at the beginning of the beginning. And our goal really is to be able to know a lot more about our customers' content as it comes into Lionbridge, and then through ways that are new and somewhat revolutionary for the space, really be able to use AI to understand a lot more of that content, whether it's life sciences content, whether it's games content, whether it's marketing content, whether it's product content, and then match that up with the right channel that we've got, or with the perfect, what I'll call data enhancer, translator, that knows the space, knows the brand, and can localize to the way the customers like. So, in some respects, I think where we're headed is a bit like the Uber model, where Uber has a platform that will match up a passenger with a driver. We want to be the platform that very intelligently can take content and match it up with the data enhancer as close to real time as possible. So that's our aspiration. AI will get us there. People won't be able to get us there at the scale.
The point that you're making is essentially that AI, the value, and it's a great point to start the conversation, because there is a lot of fear in the language industry around AI replacing the human. And what you have just described is AI enhancing the process. It's AI working to make the process better and remove points of failure, let's put it this way, in the process, instead of being a replacement technology. It is just an enhancement technology.
Well, I think it's an enhancement technology, but I think it's also a multiplier. Our view is, and we came out after the sale of our AI business, and I put a pretty audacious goal in front of the company. I said, let's localize everything in the world. And why shouldn't we be able to localize all the content in the world? Now, you can't do that with people, which is traditionally the way the industry is operated. And so I think it's actually, they're not mutually exclusive. I think the more that we can localize and translate, certainly technology will play a large role in that. But we also think that will increase the pie for the human editing, human translation, and it's not a zero-sum game.
Yeah, I love the way you're putting this, because it's usually 90% of the conversations that I have with either industry players that are afraid of change and afraid of the future, or outsiders who come in and say, hey, this industry is dead. It's going to be replaced by machines in a very short period of time. And my position is essentially, we are mostly in a transformation business. We're not creating anything. So we're somebody writes content, somebody develops a product and needs to sell that content, that product, that whatever, in another language, and we help enable that process. but we're in the middle. We're not creating anything. Where do you see the role of innovation in a scenario like this, where we're not creating stuff, we're just making it easy?
Well, I think we are creating things, but well, I'll come back to that. I think, again, I think we're at the beginning of the beginning. This is probably the most exciting time in the history of the language business. And I truly believe that, and I don't think it's corporate hyperbole, that we're at an inflection point. Customers want to do more. The traditional ways of doing more are difficult to scale. The world, despite everything that may be happening in the political currents of the last 4, 5, 6, 10 years, we continue to go global. We've seen no companies pull back from global ambitions. We are a unique industry that connects language and culture and people and products and services. And so, at the end of the day, you can get into a doom and gloom scenario pretty quickly. Say, oh my God, machine translation is going to replace everything. But I would say follow the money, and which has been interesting is the amount of money that continues to come into the space from venture capital, private equity, public listings. And so there's no shortage of capital and startups that have come. And I think if we were an industry that was heading the other direction, money is not stupid. They would probably find other venues, right? So I think that it is in a transition, though. And when there's transition, there's always, I think, trepidation, because people talk about liking change, but most people don't inherently like change. And so change can be disruptive. And as we change from what has typically been, a process-driven, project-managed-driven business that likes complexity into one that needs to scale more with technology, of course, that's daunting for many. But I think it's the future, and the folks that can see that and will embrace that, I think will have the opportunity to be successful.
So I think that you have a unique perspective in this space, because you came from outside, right? You've been in this industry. I remember the first time I met you, you had been in the industry like for 2 weeks or something like that.
Maybe 2 days when we first met.
2 days, that's true. It was a Taos conference in San Jose, and you came in. And
I remember it well.
It was a very interesting conversation that we had at that time. And the interesting thing for me, who's been in this industry for almost 40 years, is to see Lionbridge is a company that went from a startup, and a fun fact here is that before it was called Lionbridge, it was called Stream, and it was a division of Donnelly. And my little company in Brazil at the time was a vendor. It was my first localization project, was with what would eventually become Lionbridge. And it always, from the beginning, had a vision to become a leader in the industry, was the first company to go public in this space, mostly as a technology company, and then went through a professional change, got acquired by investors. Like you said, money goes where the smart business is. And they brought you from outside to take this to the next level of maturity of an organization. This is an industry that until just around the time that you joined was mostly led by founders who came from the industry and were professionals in this space. So I like to ask this question to the outsiders. What was the assumptions, and what were the things that were told to you when you came into the industry that were proven wrong or different? What has changed from the time that you were convinced to join this business to the point where you are now?
Well, there's a lot in there. I would say this. It has been 4.5 years for me now. It has been a phenomenal 4.5 years. And I think the thing that and I'll talk about the business aspects to it, but I think you'll appreciate this. The thing that has been just wonderful for me is the people in this industry are phenomenal. And really the different walks of life and the different backstories that people have, as I have been, so lucky. And I was so lucky pre-COVID to travel the world incessantly and meet so many people in our company and in the industry. And that, like you, I'd say a bit like global nomads that live in places where they didn't grow up. and the industry is full of them. And you know, the first question I always ask everybody is like, how did you get here? You know, what are you doing living in this country, and where, you know, tell me your backstory, which I always found great. So that on a human dimension has been fabulous. I think the surprise to me has been the complexity of workflows and processes, and you know, when you come in, you have you have sometimes a naive look at and view of things, which is, you know, sometimes can be helpful until you figure things out, but you have a different perspective. And I think the business, you know, again, is at a transition phase. When we looked at it, we saw complexity, we saw upside. We saw globalization continuing. We saw the ability to scale. And again, the localization, the LSP business is not unique. If you go across industries, you've had a lot of founder-led companies that have gotten to certain sizes, and, you know, private equity has come into a lot of different industries. And you've seen over the last 10, 15 years a change in, you know, as owners have sold or moved on, you know, different people are brought in, and it, you know, to bring scale to the business. And I think that's what's happening in our business in real time right now. There's been a lot of change in management, I think, of our competitors over the last few years, and many of them. And so you know, and again, got not unique. And, you know, we've been lucky. I've been very lucky. Lionbridge was a fabulous company. We have many people that have been with the company literally since its inception, or with predecessor companies just as long, with a amazing knowledge of the space, of history, and you know, and we have many people who have very strong views about where it's going to go. And I think, you know, we've been able to bring in some folks from the outside. We've been able to, you know, have some different views on how we might introduce technology. And I think the combination of those has put us in very good stead to move forward.
Yeah, and you bring this point, which is the maturity of the industry as a whole is happening in our eyes. I mean,
right.
At the beginning of this year, because there is so much M&A happening, so much money from outside coming in, and consolidation at the top. And the interesting thing from my perspective, because I lived through it, and literally in the Nimdzi 100 that we published the beginning of this year, I made a comparison of the number one company in 2020, in 2000, where I was working at the time, where we were $120 million in revenue, and that was unthinkable to have such a big company at the time. And today we're talking about 3 companies in the $1 billion range, companies that are publicly traded with very high valuation. And it's a certain professionalization of the business. But I don't think, and I would love to have your perspective on this. What is driving this consolidation? Because again, a recurring topic in my conversations with people in the industry is fear, right? It's fear of irrelevance, fear of replacement. And I tend to see it quite the opposite, is that the economy, if we look at the economy as a whole, our industry is following what is happening in the economy.
Sure.
And the fact that there is consolidation in very large players is because the size of the buyers has increased significantly, right? You talk about $100 billion companies. You're talking for the first time of companies that have $1 trillion valuations, right?
Right.
So we need big companies to be working with the big companies. And there is still a bunch of new small companies coming in the background that need the support of the smaller, more agile, innovative players that you have in the lower parts of the industry, lower in terms of size, I mean.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, you know, again, this cuts across all industries, right? Is the one thing that I don't think any of us could have envisioned 15, 20 years ago is scale that we've gotten to with companies. And the big have continued to get bigger, and, you know, acquisitions have been a vehicle to do that, right? And that will continue. And I think what you see in most industries, a consolidation, certainly we've seen it in the language industry just in the last 3 or 4 years, right? I mean, major consolidation of some top players. And I think that'll continue. And then naturally, that really spawns a whole host of innovators that will come out of typically those bigger companies. And we've seen that for the history of the language business. And they've got ideas, and they may get frustrated that they can't get everything they want done at a big company, and they go off and they do something themselves. And it's the beauty of capitalism, right? You have the big, and then people don't want to do the big, and then they go off and do their own, and then the big buy them, and it just kind of goes on and on and on. And I think that's exactly where we are. And you have a host of startups with really interesting things happening in our space. You have clients that have gotten extremely big beyond what anybody would have imagined that any of them would do individually 15 or 20 years ago in the number of projects that we get a day, the scale, and as we've all seen what's happened over, the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, we've got, detailed data around this. It's the size of projects has gone down. The number of projects has gone up. That's created its own challenges for processing and technology and translators, and it continues to change by the day. And I think the big will get bigger, but I think that also, as I said, will open up a lot of opportunities for others to bring real innovation.
So a part of our audience here is naturally made up of Lionbridge suppliers, either direct suppliers, sure, LSPs, individuals also, and I'm sure they're asking the question, where should they invest their efforts if they want to continue partnering with Lionbridge? What is Lionbridge looking for today and moving forward in a partner?
Yeah, well, I mean that if you look at at kind of the workflow chain of localization, to me that there's 3 essential components. You have content, you have the LSP, which effectively unpacks, simplifies the content, and gets it to a data enhancer, a content enhancer. And the content enhancer is where the real value is, and they bring the real value to the end customer and consumer. And so we want to make Lionbridge an incredibly attractive place for them. We want to provide technology that is ubiquitous in ways that the learning curve is very low. It's not hard to all of a sudden pick up work with Lionbridge. Like lots of industries, you also have, and we could talk for the next several hours just about what's happening in the translation community. But and it's kind of interesting, and this is one of the surprises to your earlier question. There are not an unlimited number of translators in the world. Mm-hmm. And in fact, what we've seen with the increase in volume and with COVID, I mean, I think that there are supply constraints on the translation community right now, particularly in certain languages, and that is certainly in some of the markets that we follow very closely. The pool of translators does not seem to be expanding as quickly as demand. And so that will bring a new set of challenges over the next couple of years. We've got some ideas around that, but it's one of the fascinating dynamics that's out there. And so, to your very specific question, I don't look at it what they should do with us. I think it's incumbent upon us to make Lionbridge a very attractive place for our suppliers that want to work with us.
And this is fascinating. The way you put this is that. One of the things that I like about the language industry, observing it from a growth perspective, is that it doesn't only grow in terms of volume of content. We have so many vectors that drive growth. We have number of languages is increasing. The demand, our clients every year are asking for new languages and new markets that are developing. I mean, I can see African languages growing significantly. I remember being Brazilian, and Brazilian Portuguese was not one of the early languages that were localized. Right. So as an early adopter, I had to use software in English, and it would take years until Brazilian Portuguese became a mainstream language. But you can see large African languages coming online, especially for mobile content, mobile apps, and things like that. So So that is another growth vector, and the fact that you
and that one in particular is happening, right? And it'll take a little while, but I think you just follow what happened in India with the index,
exactly,
which our customers looked at and said, okay, there's a huge consumer base there, companies outside of India. How do we reach them? And then how many languages do we have to concentrate within a market that's got literally hundreds of languages? And we've seen it, and we went out and built our own pool of translators in India
because the maturity wasn't there, right?
Exactly, exactly. And I think that's a model for us as we move into new markets, and certainly the way we think about Africa as well.
Yeah, and India is a very good example. We did a study for one of our clients, and they said, okay, we cannot go right away into I think it's 29 official languages, 42 languages with over 10 million speakers.
Yeah.
And so they asked us to do some economic analysis with linguistic and supply, because one of the challenges is you need to have local supply. And then machine translation is adding this low resource languages, low resource in terms of not a very mature translation market. It's not these languages are much more ancient than the languages that we speak, that we use. It's just that and they have a very big base of speakers. But as people come more into the consumer market, that's another vector that generates growth for us. So
and we did that, and we are unequivocally the leader in the index among many other markets.
Absolutely. And you had, I think that Lionbridge was actually one of the first localization companies to open a presence in India way before everybody else. And I think that at the time, I'm thinking here a long time ago, Baun was the company that followed you. You were setting the standard there. And today, what we see also, it's on the client side, several companies are actually transferring the localization function, the localization buying function to India. Instead of doing it in Silicon Valley, they because you have an amazing talent pool in terms of management, localization experience, and so on. These are people who live multilingualism, right? It's I find it very interesting here in the United States, which is mostly a monolingual country, even though it's it's a country that doesn't have an official language, and you have translations into hundreds of languages happening every day. But for an American to speak 3-4 languages, it's kind of unique. And you go to a place like India and you talk to a taxi driver and they'll speak 5 languages, right? It's the natural thing. Well, the monolingual American just showed up to nod and disagree with me. I got you, Tucker.
We got to get to some chat here, guys. Like, chat's blowing up. People are super engaged. So let me know when you want to head on over to the chat. And
okay, go on. Bring it on, Tucker.
Awesome. Great conversation in chat, guys. Just to respond to this, Eric, Vote, Jamie, and a lot of conversation around the supply chain here. Let me pull up Eric's. Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. I have one job. Related to Jamie's observation, according to the U.S. Bureau, so Jamie made an observation that there are more travel agents today than there were in 2000. So people, because that's an industry where people thought that the jobs were going to go away, and there's more today than there were in 2000. So just saying. And Eric Vogt responds, related to Jamie's observation, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the employment outlook for interpreters and translators is projected to grow 24% from 2020 to 2030, much faster than the average for all occupations. This is absolutely a growing business. I don't think that one needs responded to, but let's just go through here. We agree. Daniel, I'll try to find some questions here. Daniel Gray. Hi, Daniel. How are you? Where does Lionbridge view Amazon, Microsoft, Google in the localization landscape of the future? Do they drive the quote-unquote race to zero like crowd? Is that clear? Do I need to repeat that?
Well, I think it's an interesting question, and what makes it a little bit different, where they are very different than say a big manufacturing or consumer products company, is they have a lot of technology that is based on language. They have deep expertise in language, so really unique in many respects. And I think that my guess is that they're among the biggest, if not the biggest, collectively buyers of localization of any companies in the world. Right, would be my guess. And so I think that's part of the answer right there.
If I may jump in, I think that what you brought up earlier in our conversation, John, is the complexity element. For these companies, localization, translation is not a core business. And this is why, and this has been the nature of this space, it is outsourced because it's not core for them. It is complex. It is, how do you say, constantly changing. And it requires a certain area of expertise that is not their business. They don't do accounts payable. They don't do accounts receivable. They don't do HR. They outsource all those activities because it's not their core business. And it's the same thing with localization. Why would Microsoft want to have, as they used to have in the beginning, Microsoft used to have translators in-house doing French, German, Japanese, and Spanish, I think, were the 4 original languages. They were in-house, and very soon they realized, well, my in-house translators need to get vacations, and who is going to translate when they're on vacation? Who's going to translate when they are, we have holidays? And working with global suppliers, you outsource that complexity. And it's upon our industry and companies like Lionbridge and the other players in this space to automate some of this complexity, well, the process, and solve the complexity problem for the client. Any other questions, Tucker?
Oh, we got a bunch here. Rodrigo Espinoso Caballado, a frequent joiner, good to see you, Rodrigo, says, indeed, technology is the key, as many times before, namely cognitive services and automation. I believe LSPs are not truly taking advantage of or investing in as they should be. Directed at John, does Lionbridge have a dedicated innovation and development team, independent or other verticals, such as translation, interpreting, desktop publishing, etc.?
Yeah, we do. And we've got some amazing individuals that run our innovation team. I am probably their biggest champion, and really look at. They have a very clear, I think, eyed vision on where we need to get to, and I think the challenge for any company, as chronicled in the Innovator's Dilemma many moons ago, is how do you pivot away from effectively what you do every day, with the stresses that come with running a big business and demanding customers, and then create enough space for the innovation team to be able to go out and actually build a different model in some respects than what you're using today, right? So this isn't a problem that's unique to us. To me, we see very clearly what we need to do: cognitive services, automation, machine learning. And my view, it's a race against time, right? Is that somebody will get there, and somebody will get there at scale, and we certainly want to be the ones that are there very, very early, if not first.
So awesome. Before we go to other,
let me do one more. Okay. let me just get to it here. I have a question. This is from David Grunwald, Managing Director at GTS Translations. I have a question for Mr. Fennelly. Are you happy with your investment in Gengo? What is your I don't know if you want to answer that. Happiness has to do anything with it, but what is your growth strategy there, and how does it fit in with the overall Lionbridge strategy? What is your outlook for the online translation space?
Gengo is gone, right?
Hey, great question. So we saw we saw the market there, and for what I'll just call the self-serve kind of online market. And I think that there were, let's call it 4 or 5, firms that really, that was the model, right? It was a technology model. It was not what I would call a project managed operations service model. And they all got to about the same point in revenue. And it's like, okay, and why is the question that I've got, right? And so, what we saw with that acquisition is that we could bring scale, and that we could bring more flow to a self-directed channel, and that in fact is happening in real time for us, and not without fits and starts, right? But it was a new model for us that was different than the way we're doing things, right? There weren't operations teams as we knew them at Lionbridge, and it was really go to the website, upload some documents, get translated, a different community of translators. What I would call less bespoke, much less industry specific, and more of a generalization, but highly qualified people. And so what we've done is created a series of channels for us: machine translation, what we'll call direct, which is a self-serve channel, a custom channel for us for, again, we have done as a company. And I'm not sure I love it, but we have done extremely well since the inception of Lionbridge. If you're big and you're complex and you have a lot of bespoke workflows, we've been your guys, right? And so we've thrived in that environment, and that's a tough environment to exist in, but we do very well there. But we see lots of avenues that aren't binary for customers that, as we suspected, the same customers have the same needs for the self-directed channel, and we've started to see them actually use the same services, right, from us that they would have gotten from Gengo or somebody else like that. So we're long-winded answer is we're very bullish on that, what I'll call vertical within a vertical of an LSP, and we're very happy with what we did there a couple of years ago.
Awesome. So I'm going to let you guys keep going. I'm going to let you guys keep. There's a lot of questions here. Sorry, guys, in chat. We'll try to get to them. I'm out.
Good. So you mentioned the vertical inside the vertical, and verticals are obviously areas where everybody wants to know where is the growth, where is it, where are we investing? Is it gaming? Is it life sciences? Is it still Silicon Valley where the biggest opportunities for business are? What insights, what burgeoning verticals do you see there at Lionbridge these days?
Well, we created a strategy for the company 4 years ago, which we look at every year and validate that it's still the right one for us, or change. And we really haven't changed much. And so the history of Lionbridge is the history of technology. And so our biggest customers have typically been big technology companies. And that continues to be one of our primary, what I'll call, end markets. Games is another one. Life sciences is a third, and the AI crowd business was our fourth. We have, and I would say what's come into the mix, which wasn't there 4 years ago, even though we had a business there, which has become a much bigger piece of the puzzle for us, is interpretation, or OPI. Mm-hmm. And so that is a very, very fast growing market for us right now, as are the others. And so, we've stuck to our guns. We've had a lot of discipline about what we wanted to do. And, where we've been successful are big, complicated companies at the enterprise level. And that's where we'll continue to be, whether it's in technology, whether it's life sciences, whether it's in games, and then our regional focus on Europe and Asia and the Americas for big manufacturing, consumer products companies, et cetera. But, we've been very consistent. And I think, we try to, match up where we think the growth prospects are with our capabilities. And so far, I think we've done a pretty good job of that.
Yeah, the DNA of Lionbridge was IT companies. Localization is in the name of the company, and that was and life sciences became very early on. It's just as an anecdote, I remember very clearly many years ago, we used to refer to the medical and pharmaceutical industry. And then one day, Rory, your predecessor, started talking about the life sciences space. And all of a sudden, I can tell you, working in marketing and following in the industry, within 3 months, nobody talked about medical and pharmaceutical anymore. It became life sciences, right? So Lionbridge set the stage and the language for our space at that time. So thinking of it, it's about 25 years ago, 20 years ago that happened, that switch. And it's quite interesting because you mentioned manufacturing and other segments. What I see happening now, and I think that we are going to go into another technology revolution and explosive growth in segments that we don't know. I mean, 10 years ago, we didn't know that we would be localizing as much as we are for companies like Facebook that is spending a lot of money in our industry with multiple vendors. What is going to be the Facebook 10 years from now with 5G, right? Facebook was enabled by 4G. What is the world going to be working on? Industries that we don't know. And this is why
you use them as a proxy. You use them as a proxy almost for back to our original discussion with the kind of the tension between technology and humans. And there's a company that's grown at astronomical rates, and they've gone into markets where they frankly don't have a huge amount of infrastructure. And and I think at the end of the day, I mean, if they've done a lot of really, really interesting and really good stuff on the language space. But I think there is a need for both as you move into markets at warp speed, and you have huge numbers of people on your platform in languages that are very different and some complex, right? And I think that creates lots of opportunities for people in the language space.
Well, and the alternative markets, you briefly mentioned new geographies. Yesterday, I was listening to a story about Kavak, this Mexican unicorn that is revolutionizing the used car market. It's a very well-established market in the United States, but they're making inroads in Brazil, Uruguay, Argentina, and they're looking at Africa and Asia as next markets. So there is this alternative direction of localization from other markets that we're not naturally thinking as traditional buying markets, like Mexico, like Brazil, like Korea. I mean, we're all talking these days about Squid Games and the Korean wave. It's a big challenge. One of the conversations that I've had with a client recently is that one of the biggest challenges that they have is finding translators from Asian languages to Asian languages. We're assuming that, and actually, you probably don't even know, I thought it was one of the most brilliant marketing campaigns in our industry back in the beginning of Lionbridge, where everything was E for electronic, and the marketing for Lionbridge was E doesn't stand for English, right? Because it was the language for everything was in English. And this was one of the interesting topics. So do you see, you mentioned India, but do you see any other markets coming up as client markets for Lionbridge?
Well, we operate in I think most, if not all, of what I would call well-established markets. So we've got regions where we've got you mentioned Korea. We've got a good presence in Korea, Japan. China's one of the fastest growing areas that we've got right now in Asia and beyond, just on pure growth rates. And so, I think that we look at it and say there are so many markets that offer very attractive growth prospects that are big and established. And typically, for a company like us, as I've mentioned a couple of times, right? It's the bigger companies that are out there that operate in multiple end markets that, those are typically the places that will end up in service.
Yes, and also on the dynamic of the industry, one of the things that happens, and you were talking earlier about the fact that as consolidation happens, so I'm combining two comments that you made, is the comment that people don't leave this industry. And Adolfo Hernandez, who was the CEO of SDL, one of the questions that I asked him when he was recently in the industry, and what struck you most about this industry, and he said it's an industry where people don't leave. When people come into this industry and they stay and they stay and they stay. And we have in our book, Tucker and I talk about this concept of the Jello Effect, right? In our industry, when you combine two companies, there is this it's like squeezing Jello. You're going to have small bits that come out, and these are new companies that will start around the world from people that were made redundant in the mergers of the big companies. This SDL RWS, I can predict that there's going to be 10 new companies in the next months, because there's going to be optimization, there's going to be consolidation, but they stay in the industry. They don't go to the automotive industry. They don't go to software industry. They stay in this space, this is quite interesting for our space. But what the question that I had is that when you're looking, what happens usually, the dynamic is that these small players, they will create the new technologies. They are going to be the innovators, because you mentioned they don't have room to innovate, to create inside a large organization, because you have processes, you have scale, you have a lot of issues that come on board. But they go out, they start their own companies, and 10 years later, they're going to be acquired by somebody. So what are you looking for when it comes to this acquisition in this space? You mentioned OPI, interpretation is a booming industry.
Yeah, I mean, so I think what we look for in acquisitions are, obviously it fits into our strategy, and that it is core to where we want to go. It's got technology that would be useful, and I think the often overlooked dimension is the people, and I think what we haven't talked a lot about, if at all, is talent. And when we look at acquisitions, it is very much an eye on talent. And as I said to our chief people officer repeatedly over the last several months, I mean, I think we think for the next 5 or 10 years, the differentiation is going to be people. And I think now from a human capital standpoint, it's recruitment, retention, and incentive plans are the most important things you've got to focus on as a company. And I think the talent war that's out there, which is not new, but I think now is exacerbated with COVID, I think will define the winners as much as the losers, as in maybe anything else, maybe even more than technology in some respects, because you need those people to fuel where you want to go with innovation and technology. And so from an M&A standpoint, that's very much that's very much in the frame for us, is okay, is the talent compatible with our culture, and will they be accretive? So those are all things that we look at.
It's more important than technology is people, is what you're saying. Because people can use technology, right? Technology by itself doesn't do much.
Yeah, I mean, and if you look at internally at Lionbridge for the last several years, we've had 3 priorities since I got here: people, customers, and simplification, in no particular order. But my view is, if you take care of your folks and they believe in what you're doing, then they'll look after your customers in ways that you want them to. And I don't think it's a magic formula, often overlooked by companies, but one that we pay particular attention to.
Well, we're about 10 minutes away from our time limit here. Tucker, do we have any other questions from our followers and the people who are attending the conversation here?
Oh boy, do we. We've got one from Javi here that I promised to get to. I don't know if I'll be able to pull it up on screen, but Javier Diaz Fernandez Carvajal would like to ask John Fennelly, for us upcoming leaders, he's still in his 30s, young man, what are the values and skills you recommend us to focus on so that one day we can be inspired to lead teams, people, and inspire others at the same level as you do?
Well, great question. And I get asked that question quite often. I would say 2 things to Javi. Be curious. Never, ever, ever stop learning. And be yourself.
He doesn't have a problem with that.
Yeah, no, if you know Javi. If you know Javi.
You may know him, I don't.
Yeah. All right, let's do it. Let's move on to Anna Wojchenko. Anna Wojchenko asked for both John and Renato. John said that, quote unquote, the big will be bigger. Does that mean broadening the spectrum of services that giant MLVs are covering, going the unconventional way?
Oh, unequivocally, yes. I mean, if you think you're going to be doing the same thing, next year and the following year and the following year that you were last year or the year before, then you're not thinking about life the right way. I think things change, and yes, unequivocally, we'll offer different services. I think the nature of the business is changing before our very eyes, and we will continue. If we want to get bigger, we have to. I don't think we have a choice.
And the thing that I would add is the comment that the fact that things are getting bigger doesn't mean that the other things will disappear. So there is this misrepresentation or wrong idea that because there are new things happening, that the old things will stop happening. So I saw resistance to change when we went from typewriters to word processors, from word processors to computers, from local markets to the internet. So there's always some fear, but at the end of the day, technologies, processes, things coexist. The new gets bigger, but it doesn't replace what existed before. So I'm very optimistic about change happening and growth happening, because there's more opportunity, not less. Tucker?
Excellent. I'm trying to find one last one here from Jean-Paul, who asked a very good question, but it's not coming up in my stream here. So Dario Casio says hi. Beautiful memories of the I'm not going to speak Irish. Dun Lagwar office.
Dun Larry.
There we go. There we go.
Me too. Me too. I may go there next week for the first time since COVID.
Cool. It's a beautiful office there. It used to be the Berlitz office. That's one of the things that Lionbridge acquired.
Right. It's right on the water in Dublin for anybody that wants to come to visit. Fabulous place.
Yeah. Other than talk amongst yourselves. Well, continue with your questions, Renato. I'm sorry, Jean-Paul. I saw that you had a really good question.
Let's talk a little bit about the gaming space, which is a very interesting space. How does it fit in the Lionbridge? We have a show here which is only for gamers because it's such a culture in itself. Is it a company inside the company? Are you a gamer? How do you see this space?
So I would say it is a company within the company, but I think what we have is commonalities that we can use some of the scale we have in our business localization. The difference is that we have a huge test business in games and an audio business, and we continue to build out studios for audio work around the world, and a big investment on our side. So we are a culture of gamers in the game space. We have a phenomenal team. We just had a meeting with our whole games team this morning. We made a very conscientious decision, strategic decision a few years ago to really grow that business. We saw an opportunity, and I think that was the right decision, as we've seen. And we've picked up a number of new clients over the last 2 or 3 years, and we'll continue to do so. If you look at the numbers, there are, I went to a conference 3 years ago, and speaker said there were 1.5 billion gamers in the world. 6 months later, I went to a conference and they said there were 4 billion gamers in the world. I think there's 7.8 billion people in the world, so half the world, but maybe that's right. And so,
if they consider solitaire a game, I'm a gamer, but that's as far as I go.
I would say I'm a gamer, but not a hardcore gamer like some of our throughout our games business. Mm-hmm. And I think that's in our DNA, and a great group, but we're very, very bullish in the game space.
Yes, and that's interesting because you essentially it's one of those areas where you essentially acquired your way into and developed a presence and recognition from the buyer side that you're a legitimate player, because it was it's a very interesting segment to look at, because it was dominated by small studios around the world, and Keywords did an amazing consolidation in that space. Pull to Win, the other player in Japan, also had an interesting presence, and then Lionbridge came in, did some key acquisitions, and became a very viable competitor in that space. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've done, and we're very proud of, is we have offered the market a real alternative to what was there before, and I think the market has recognized that, you know, what we bring to the table, and has rewarded us for that.
Excellent. So we have 4 minutes.
I got it here. So from Jean-Paul in chat. Sorry, I couldn't find it on LinkedIn chat for whatever reason. This is for John. How do you see the market developing for augmented neural machine translation? Given the demand outpacing the supply for translators, are there sufficient post editors in art in and of itself currently and in the pipeline? How does Lionbridge address MT plus post editing for clients seeking price and time savings?
Well, there's I think 4 questions in that question, right? So,
yeah, he's getting his money's worth in there.
Yeah, definitely. So I would say they're not mutually exclusive. NMT will continue and will continue to consume larger parts of content. I think the trick for us is how do we bundle as many jobs as we can to make them attractive for post editors to easily pick up work and be able to make a living doing it, right? So that's the challenge. Is, you know, as jobs have become smaller and smaller and smaller, we're employing different pricing models and trying to find the right mix that will work for both sides. Obviously, what's generated huge amounts of content through neural machine translation, and at the same time, an attractive proposition for post editors to work in.
Wonderful. So I would like to, since we're getting close to our time, I would like to thank you, John, for participating, and I would like to thank Lionbridge. For our followers here who don't know, Lionbridge is giving away free subscription to Multilingual Magazine Digital. If you click on the little present icon there, you get a free 1-year subscription. That's $32 worth of a gift that Lionbridge is giving you to be following what is going on in the industry. If you're not reading multilingual, you're missing out on an organization that is transforming itself significantly and generating a lot of valuable content. So congratulations for the 25 years. Thank you very much for being a great member of our industry, contributing to the growth and the professionalism in our space. And the floor is yours. If you, whatever you want to share with our attendees. I know a big chunk of our of people are going to see this not live, but in the recorded version. So.
No, hey, Renato, thanks. Tucker, thanks. It's been an enjoyable hour, and always happy to talk about our company and our 25 years. And thanks for helping us celebrate it. We're very excited. We've had a great week of kind of a birthday celebration for us, and so we look forward to the future. And I would say to all out there, keep the faith. The future is bright, and we plan to be a big part of it.
Awesome. Tucker, do you want to do the closing?
Sure, why not? Because I am so prepared for that. Well, thank you everybody for joining Nimdzi Live with our guest host, Renato Beninatto, and your guest operator, me, today. Our next episode of Nimdzi Live coming up here is who do we got coming up? I believe it's Miguel Sepulveda on October 26th at 9:00 a.m. Pacific time. I'm going to be talking with Miguel Sepulveda. We're going to be talking about the always elusive return on investment. How do you measure the ROI for your localization program? So that's coming up here on later this month. So I would like to thank our guest host Renato. I would like to thank John Fennelly, who I believe, I don't know if I've lost him already. And I would like to thank everybody in chat. It was a really engaged chat. Thank you especially to Jamie down there in chat. You were answering those questions quicker than we could get them to Renato and John. So until then, we'll see you next time on the next episode of Nimdzi Live. Cheers.